The door that knew her. Rain tapped the window like impatient fingers, and the old farmhouse creaked as if it was trying to warn Isla without words. She stood in the hallway with a candle in one hand and a flashlight in the other, annoyed at herself for being nervous. The power had flickered twice, the kind of flicker that always made the shadows look a little too alive. "Okay, Isla," she whispered, forcing a laugh that sounded braver than she felt. "It's just a house, a very dramatic house." She had moved in 3 days ago, chasing a fresh start after a year that had left her heart tired and her confidence bruised. New town, new job at the small library, new silence. The only problem was the house came with an entire history the landlord never fully explained. He'd smiled too quickly, handed her the keys, and said, "Don't mind the east wing. It's been closed for decades." Decades. That was the word that stuck in her mind like a splinter. Isla wasn't the kind of person who chased trouble, but she was the kind of person who hated secrets. She'd spent too long letting fear decide things for her, who to trust, what to try, how small to make herself. Tonight, with thunder rolling low outside, she could feel that old version of her trying to step back into control. So she walked forward instead. The east wing door waited at the end of the hall, darker than the walls around it, like it swallowed candlelight. It had no knob, only an iron plate shaped like a crescent moon, and scratches along the frame that looked like someone had tried to claw their way out long ago. Isla's throat tightened. "Ridiculous," she muttered, and then, because she couldn't help herself, she added, "If there's a ghost in there, you're paying rent." Her own joke startled her into a small grin. The grin faded when the iron plate warmed under her palm. Warmed. The candle flame leaned toward the door as if pulled. The air changed, still cold, but suddenly scented. Not like dust or rot, but like winter pine and old paper, the way the library smelled when she opened a book that had been loved carefully for generations. Isla pulled her hand back fast. Her heart thumped like it wanted to outrun her. Then she heard it. A voice, not loud, not dramatic, just close, intimate, like someone speaking from the other side of a thin curtain. "Isla." Her name landed with strange gentleness, like it had been held in someone's mouth a long time. The sound didn't feel threatening. It felt familiar, and that was what scared her the most. She turned sharply, sweeping the flashlight down the hall. No one. Only the empty frames on the wall, the shadows, the rain, and the house breathing its slow, wooden breath. She faced the door again. "Who's there?" she asked, trying for authority, but her voice wavered. Silence. Then softly, "I tried not to wake you." The candle trembled. Isla stepped back, bumping the wall, steadying herself. This wasn't a prank. The landlord didn't have a sense of humor, and besides, the town was too quiet for this kind of cruelty. "Why do you know my name?" she demanded. "How do you know me?" Another pause, as if the speaker was choosing words that wouldn't hurt. "I have watched this house for a long time," the voice said, "and I promised myself I would never speak to the next person who lived here, because every time I reach for someone, I ruin their peace." Isla's anger flickered, then stopped talking. "I can't," he admitted, and something in that honesty made her chest ache. "Because you're not afraid of the dark, you're afraid of being alone in it." Her breath caught. It wasn't a guess. It was too accurate, too personal, too true. She should have run, she knew it. Her body even tried, her feet shifted, her muscles tightened. But her heart did something stubborn and foolish. It leaned in. "What are you?" she whispered. The air on the other side of the door felt suddenly heavier, like the answer had weight. "A king," the voice said, not proud, not arrogant, tired. "Of a people who don't deserve a throne." Isla swallowed. A king of what? There was a faint sound then, metal moving, not violently, but carefully, like someone unfastening a lock they had sworn never to touch. Monsters, he said, and his voice broke on the word. And I have spent centuries trying to make them less monstrous. The candle's flame stretched thin. The hallway seemed to narrow, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Isla stared at the iron plate, now warmer than her own skin. Her hand lifted, without permission from her mind. Don't, the voice warned, suddenly urgent in the gentlest way. Isla, if you open it, you will see me, and if you see me, you may not be able to forget me. A laugh tried to rise in her throat, something nervous and sharp. That's your big warning, that I'll remember you. I'm trying to protect you, he said, and now there was pain behind the calm, like a smile pressed over a wound. The last person who opened that door believed I was their miracle, but miracles can turn into cages when people need you too much. Isla blinked hard, her eyes stinging. She didn't know why. She didn't know this man, this voice, this king. But she recognized the feeling of being needed until you disappear. She recognized the loneliness of carrying other people's expectations like heavy stones. Thunder rolled again, and the house shuddered. Somewhere downstairs, glass clinked, like a window had opened. Isla stiffened. I'm not alone, she whispered. No, the king said, and for the first time, real fear slipped into his voice. They found you. Who found me? Isla asked, panic rising. The iron plate beneath her palm pulsed with heat, like a heartbeat. Don't open the door, the king said quickly. Listen to me, go to the kitchen, take the salt jar and… A sharp knock hit the front door downstairs. Not polite, not human. The candle went out in Isla's hand, and the hallway dropped into darkness so complete it felt like drowning. Her flashlight flickered once, twice, then died. In the black, the king's voice became the only thing she could hold on to. Isla, he whispered, closer now, as if the door itself had thinned. If they come up those stairs, I will break my vow and step out. And when I do, everything in this house will change. The knock downstairs came again, harder, and footsteps began to climb, slow and certain. Isla's fingers closed around the iron plate, trembling. And the lock on the east wing door clicked open from the inside. Footsteps climbed the stairs like they owned them, slow and confident, pausing on every third step as if the person coming up wanted Isla to imagine the worst. The darkness pressed against her eyes, and without the flashlight, the hallway felt endless, just cold air and the sound of her own breathing turning shallow. Isla kept her hand on the iron plate. It was so warm now it almost burned, like a living thing under her palm. The door had unlocked, but it still didn't open. It waited for her decision. Isla, the voice behind the door murmured, steadying itself like someone holding back a storm. I need you to stay quiet. Do you understand me? She swallowed, forcing her voice down to a whisper. I don't even know your name. A soft exhale, almost a sad laugh. Names are dangerous. They let people think they own you. Then, after a beat, you can call me Alaric. The name sounded old, heavy, like it had survived a long time. A new sound slipped into the hallway, a faint scraping, like nails across wood, but not rushed. Patient. Sure. Isla felt her skin prickle, and she backed closer to the east wing door until her shoulder touched it. What are they? She breathed. Not ghosts, Alaric said. Not demons, just hungry hearts that forgot how to be human. That answer should have made no sense, but somehow it did. Isla had seen people in the real world who looked normal and still drained the life out of everyone around them. She met charming smiles that left bruises on your confidence. She'd heard sweet words that were really ropes. The scraping reached the top step. Then a voice floated into the hall, bright as polished glass. Isla, hello. I thought I heard someone moving. It sounded like a friendly neighbor, a concerned stranger, the kind of person who would bring cookies and ask how you liked the town. But the tone was wrong, too smooth, too perfect, as if it had been practiced. Isla's mouth went dry. She didn't answer. The voice continued, gentle and amused. It's impolite to ignore visitors. You did move in, after all. That makes you part of us now. Behind Isla, Alaric spoke with a controlled urgency. Do not speak to them. They will learn your voice. Learn my voice for what? Isla whispered. To follow you, he said simply. Anywhere. The door at the end of the hallway creaked. Isla heard slow steps crossing the floorboards. Whoever it was, they didn't stumble in the dark. They didn't need light. Isla's thoughts raced. Her phone was downstairs. Her keys, too. Her courage, she realized, had a limit. She could face a creepy old door, sure, but not whatever this was. Her back slid down the wall until she crouched. She pressed her free hand over her mouth to keep her breathing quiet, and she tried to listen for anything that made sense, anything human. A shadow moved where shadows shouldn't. The air shifted, smelling faintly of something sweet, like roses left too long in water. The visitor stopped halfway down the hall. Ah, the voice said softly, there you are. Isla's heart jumped so hard it hurt. She was hidden in darkness, yet it spoke like it could see her. I can feel fear, it continued, almost kindly. Fear has a taste, but don't worry, no one wants to harm you. Alaric's voice turned sharp, the gentleness cracking. Liar. The visitor chuckled. Oh, you're awake. Silence stretched between them, thick and electric. Isla felt like she'd accidentally stepped into the middle of a conversation that had been waiting a century to continue. The visitor took one step closer. King Alaric, it said with mocking respect. Still hiding behind old wood and old promises. How touching. Isla's eyes stung. King, vampire, promise. None of it was supposed to be real, but her instincts were screaming that the threat was. Alaric's voice came lower, dangerous in a quiet way. Leave the girl. The girl, the visitor repeated, like Isla was a toy someone had misplaced. She opened your house. That means she opened your world. It's not personal. Isla's stomach twisted. She hadn't opened the door yet, but the lock had clicked, and something downstairs had opened too. Someone had chosen her tonight on purpose. Isla squeezed her eyes shut. Think, do something. Her hand brushed the doorframe beside her, and her fingers found a small hook on the wall, a little brass peg. A memory flashed. Her landlord had pointed to it casually. Old owners used to hang a bell there. It doesn't work anymore. She felt around in the dark until her fingertips touched a thin chain. Then a small bell, cold metal, dusty, forgotten. Isla didn't know why, but she held it anyway, clutching it like it mattered. Alaric spoke again, softer now, directly to her. Isla, listen carefully. If you ring anything, if you drop anything. The visitor moved again, and the scent of sweet roses grew stronger. She can't hear you properly, my king. Fear makes humans impulsive. Isla's throat tightened, shame mixing with anger. She wasn't helpless. She didn't want to be the kind of person who froze and waited to be saved. She de-promised herself she was done living like that. She opened her eyes and stared into the darkness where the visitor stood. Her voice came out small but clear. Why are you here? The visitor paused, pleased. There it is, the voice. Alaric's breath caught behind the door, the sound of someone realizing a line had been crossed. The visitor smiled into the dark. Isla couldn't see it, but she could hear it. I'm here because you moved into a house that belongs to a king, and everything that belongs to a king eventually becomes political. Political, Isla repeated, confused and terrified. Yes, the visitor said. Some of us are tired of Alaric's compassion, tired of his rules, tired of hiding and pretending we can live on crumbs of existence. We want him to be what he was born to be. Isla's hands shook around the little bell. And what was he born to be? The visitor's voice softened to a whisper. A weapon. Behind the door, Alaric spoke, and his pain was suddenly unmistakable. Isla, I am not what they want, and if they take you tonight, they will use you to force me to become it. The floorboard beside Isla creaked. The visitor was closer, too close. Isla's mind snapped into motion. She swung her arm and flung the bell down the hallway, away from her crouched position. It hit the floor with a bright, sharp ring, clear and startling in the darkness. For 1 second, the visitor's attention shifted. Isla lunged for the east wing door. Her fingers found the seam, and she pulled. The door opened a few inches, releasing a breath of cold air that smelled like night rain and ancient stone. In that narrow gap, Isla saw something she didn't expect. Not a monster leaping forward. Not claws. A hand, pale, steady, and open, palm up like an invitation. Like help offered with humility, not power. Alaric's voice came through the crack, rough with restraint. Take my hand, if you choose it, not because you're afraid, but because you trust me. Trust. Isla had trusted the wrong people before, trusted smiles that wanted something, trusted promises that came with conditions, but this felt different. He wasn't demanding, he was asking. The visitor recovered from the distraction and laughed softly. Oh, Isla, don't you see? The moment you touch him, you become part of the story you can't escape. Isla stared at Alaric's hand in the gap of the door, then back into the darkness where the sweet scent waited. Her chest tightened, her courage rose anyway. She reached forward. And just as her fingers were about to meet his, a cold hand closed around her wrist from the dark, gentle in pressure but unbreakable in certainty. The visitor leaned close enough that Isla felt its breath like winter. Wrong choice, it whispered. The door shuddered in Isla's other hand, and Alaric's voice turned into something ancient and terrifyingly calm. Let her go, he said, or I will step out. The hallway fell silent, as if the entire house was waiting to see whether a king's mercy would finally end. The grip on Isla's wrist didn't hurt, but it was firm in a way that felt worse than pain, like being claimed without permission. Her pulse hammered under the visitor's fingers, and she realized with sudden clarity that this thing wasn't guessing where she was. It was reading her. Isla's other hand still clutched the edge of the east wing door. Through the narrow opening, Alaric's palm stayed up, steady, offered. Not grabbing, not pulling, just waiting as if he refused to rescue her by taking away her choice. The visitor gave a soft sigh, almost disappointed. Always the same with you, Alaric. Even now, you won't just take what you need. A quiet change ran through the air, like a storm choosing a direction. Alaric spoke, and the restraint in his voice trembled. She is not a tool, she is a person. People are tools, the visitor replied lightly. That's what they've always been to us. That's what you refuse to accept, and it's why you've become weak. Weak, Isla hated that word. She'd heard it all her life when she cried too easily, cared too much, or refused to become cold just to be safe. She'd carried kindness like a burden because others treated it like one. Now she understood what this was really about. This wasn't just an intruder in a hallway. It was a fight over what power should be. Isla swallowed and forced her voice to stay calm. If he's so weak, why are you afraid of him? The visitor's hand tightened for the first time. Not enough to injure, just enough to warn. Alaric's voice lowered. Isla. But Isla kept going, her fear transforming into something steadier. Courage didn't feel like loud bravery in her chest. It felt like refusing to shrink. You said it's political, she told the visitor. So you need him, you can't just replace him. The visitor chuckled softly, and Isla felt the sound like cold silk. Clever, the library girl can think. Isla flinched at being reduced to a label, then lifted her chin anyway. I'm not the girl. My name is Isla. For a moment the visitor was quiet, as if tasting the name. Then it spoke again, almost approving. Fine, Isla, you want the truth? We could kill him, yes. But we don't want a dead king. We want a king who stops pretending he's human. Alaric's hand in the doorway trembled, barely, like someone hearing their worst fear spoken out loud. Isla looked at his open palm and saw more than skin and bone. She saw restraint, self-control, a vow made in loneliness. He wasn't hiding because he was weak. He was hiding because he was trying not to become what they were demanding. And now she was the lever they planned to use. The visitor leaned closer, voice syrup-sweet. Here is the offer. Come with me, Isla. I promise you will not be harmed. You will be treated like royalty. Warm rooms, pretty dresses, all the attention your lonely little heart craves. Isla's throat tightened. The offer was absurd, and yet it aimed straight at her softest places. She had been lonely. She had wanted to feel chosen, valued, safe. Then the visitor added, almost casually, "And if you refuse, we will take you anyway, and Alaric will watch. He always watches. He always suffers. That's his favorite hobby." Isla's eyes burned. She didn't know the full history, but she believed the suffering part. She could hear it in Alaric's silences, in the careful distance of his words. She turned her head toward the crack of the door and whispered, "Alaric, why do they listen to you at all?" A long breath from inside, steadying. "Because I was the worst of them once," he admitted, and the honesty hit the hallway like a bell. "And I woke up." The visitor laughed, delighted. "Oh, I love this part." Alaric continued, voice quiet but clear. "Centuries ago, I thought fear was leadership. I thought control was safety. I built a kingdom with rules made from cruelty and called it order." Isla's chest tightened. She waited, afraid of what came next. Then Alaric said, "And then a human child looked at me and offered bread." Silence. Isla blinked. "Bread." "Yes," Alaric said, and something broke gently in the word. She was starving. I could see her ribs under her shirt, yet she held out her only food because she thought I looked lonely. The visitor scoffed. "A sentimental myth." "It happened," Alaric replied. "That child changed me more than any war. I realized power without kindness is just hunger with a crown." The words wrapped around Isla like warmth she didn't expect to find in a cold house. Power without kindness is just hunger with a crown. It felt like the message she had needed her whole life without knowing it. The visitor sighed. "Beautiful, truly. Now give us the girl." Isla's wrist was still trapped. The visitor's grip wasn't painful, but it was certain. Isla realized with a jolt that if she fought, it would win. If she froze, it would win. If she begged, it would enjoy it. So she did the one thing the visitor hadn't prepared for. She softened. Isla let her shoulders drop, let her breathing slow, let her voice turn gentle. "You said you can feel fear," she told the visitor. "Can you feel something else too?" The visitor paused, suspicious. "What are you doing?" "Listening," Isla said. For the first time, she truly listened, not just for danger, but for emotion. Under the visitor's polished voice, there was a faint tremor, not excitement. Need. Loneliness, dressed up like confidence. Isla whispered, "You're not here because you're strong. You're here because you're starving." The visitor's grip faltered, just a fraction, like a mask slipping. Alaric's voice sharpened. "Isla, don't." But Isla continued, speaking with the same calm she used with frightened children at the library when they got lost between shelves. "You're starving for power," she said. "For attention, for someone to tell you that you matter. But taking doesn't fill that kind of emptiness. It just makes it louder." The visitor's breath changed, a subtle hiss of anger or pain. "That's enough," it snapped. In that instant, the grip tightened again, and Isla felt herself being pulled backward into the hallway, away from the door. Alaric's hand moved, finally, not to grab, but to protect. The door swung wider on its own, like the house had decided to stop being neutral. Cold air rushed out. Not icy, not sharp, clean, like mountain wind. Isla saw him. Alaric stood just inside the east wing, tall and still, dressed in dark clothing that looked old-fashioned without looking like a costume. His hair was black, his skin pale in the dimness, and his eyes were not red or wild. They were the color of storm clouds, heavy with restraint and heartbreak. He looked at Isla the way a person looks at a fragile thing they refuse to break. Then he looked past her, into the darkness, and his voice turned into a quiet command. "Release her, now." The visitor laughed, but there was strain in it. There he is, the king who wants to be a saint. Alaric stepped forward. No explosion, no gore, no monstrous leap. Just one deliberate step that made the air feel heavier, like gravity remembered him. The visitor's confidence flickered. Isla felt it. Whatever Alaric was, he carried authority the way some people carry grief. Invisibly, but it changes everything in the room. Alaric didn't bare teeth, didn't threaten. He only said, "You came for a weapon, but I will not be one." The visitor's grip jerked Isla closer, using her like a shield. "Then watch her pay for your principles." Isla's fear surged, but she fought to keep her mind clear. Alaric had told her earlier that names were dangerous. They let people think they own you. But maybe names could also remind someone of who they were. Isla forced herself to speak, voice shaking, but loud enough to cut through the hallway. "What is your name?" The visitor froze. A long pause. Alaric's eyes flicked to Isla, warning and surprise mixed together. The visitor's voice went strangely flat. "You don't need it." "I do," Isla insisted. "If you're going to treat people like tools, you don't get to stay faceless. Say your name." For a second, the visitor didn't answer, and Isla felt the truth behind that silence. It didn't want to be known. To be known was to be seen, and to be seen was to be held accountable to something human inside it. Finally, like spitting out a memory, it said, "Severin." Isla nodded slowly. "Severin," she repeated, making it real. "You're not nothing." The visitor flinched again, tiny but real. Alaric spoke, voice low with something that sounded almost like grief. "Severin, you were my friend once." The hallway seemed to tilt. Isla didn't expect that. Neither, apparently, did Severin. "You don't get to say that," Severin hissed, anger flashing through the smoothness. "Not after you abandoned us for your little human morals." "I didn't abandon you," Alaric said. "I tried to lead you out." Severin's grip on Isla loosened, not because it wanted to, but because the words hit something tender under the armor. Isla felt the opening like a door cracking. She acted. Isla twisted her wrist, not with strength, but with timing, slipping free the instant the pressure eased. She stumbled forward into the space between Severin and Alaric, heart racing. Alaric moved immediately, still gentle, still controlled, placing himself slightly in front of Isla without touching her, as if to say, "I will protect you, but I will not possess you." Severin's expression finally showed in the dim light, and Isla saw what frightened her most. Not fangs. Sadness sharpened into rage. "You made me believe in you," Severin said, voice breaking like ice. "You promised we could be more. Then you locked yourself away and left me with the hunger." Alaric didn't deny it. He bowed his head, humility heavy in the motion. "That was my failure." Isla looked at Alaric, stunned. He could have argued. He could have blamed. He could have acted like a king above apology. Instead, he apologized. "I thought isolating myself would keep everyone safe," Alaric continued, eyes lifting, steady. "But all it did was leave you alone with your worst selves." Severin's anger wavered, confused by accountability. "So what now? You'll give speeches. You'll pray. You'll keep starving while the world moves on." Alaric's voice softened. "No, I will come back." Isla's breath caught. Alaric turned his head slightly toward her, and his eyes asked permission before the words did. If she chooses to walk away, I will not follow. If she chooses to stay, I will not hide. Isla didn't understand why her eyes filled. She barely knew him. Yet she felt the weight of his choice. He was willing to face his own people, not with dominance, but with responsibility. Severin's mouth twisted. And the girl, what is she to you? Alaric paused, and when he spoke, his voice was so honest it hurt. She is the reminder I needed, that humans can be brave without being cruel. That kindness is not weakness. Isla's chest tightened. All her life she'd been told to toughen up, harden, become sharper. No one had ever called her softness brave. Severin stared at Isla, then at Alaric. The air trembled with the possibility of chaos. Then, unexpectedly, Severin took a step back. Not retreating in defeat, retreating in conflict. This isn't over, Severin said, voice quieter now, less polished. If you return, others will challenge you. Not everyone wants a merciful king. Alaric nodded once. Then I will face them. Severin's gaze flicked to Isla with something like warning. And you, Isla, don't confuse a gentle monster with a harmless one. Isla met Severin's eyes and answered with the steadiest truth she had. I'm not looking for harmless. I'm looking for good. For a heartbeat, Severin looked like it might laugh. Instead, it looked tired. Then the shadows around it folded like curtains, and the presence in the hallway thinned, as if the night itself carried Severin away. The sweet rose scent faded, leaving only rain and old wood. The house exhaled. Isla realized her knees were shaking. She leaned a hand against the wall, trying to stay upright. Alaric didn't rush toward her. He didn't invade her space. He stood at a respectful distance, as if he understood that fear needs room to breathe. Are you hurt? He asked quietly. Isla looked at her wrist. No bruises, just cold skin and a pounding pulse. No. A silence settled, full of things neither of them knew how to say yet. Outside, rain softened to a steady whisper. Isla finally asked, why were you locked in there? Alaric's gaze drifted past her, toward the dark hallway, like he could still feel the echoes of old choices. Because I didn't trust myself. Isla nodded slowly. But you do now. Alaric's jaw tightened, and the answer came with humility instead of certainty. I trust the part of me that wants to be better. I do not trust the hunger. Isla took that in. The honesty, the discipline, the fear of his own power, it didn't make him less frightening. It made him real. She looked at the open door behind him. Beyond it, she could see a corridor of stone, dust, and silence, an exile made of walls. She imagined centuries of loneliness sitting there like weight on the floor. Alaric, Isla said softly, you said that child offered you bread. He nodded once, eyes dark with memory. Isla took a shaky breath and made a decision that felt both terrifying and simple. She walked to the kitchen with him watching, never pushing, never following too close. She found the bread she'd bought that morning, still wrapped on the counter like a normal life waiting to be reclaimed. She returned to the doorway of the east wing and held the bread out with both hands, the way you offer something you mean. Alaric stared at it as if it were a sunrise. Isla, his voice cracked, you shouldn't. I'm not feeding your hunger, she said, gentle but firm. I'm feeding your hope. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he reached out slowly, respectfully, and took it like a sacred thing. When his fingers brushed hers, Isla felt a coldness that didn't steal her warmth. It steadied her, like standing beside a winter lake and realizing you can still breathe. Alaric didn't pretend. He didn't offer pretty lies. If you stay near me, you will be in danger. Isla nodded, swallowing fear. If I leave, you'll face them alone. A quiet beat. The rain whispered. The house held its breath again, but this time it felt like anticipation, not dread. Alaric's eyes softened. I will not ask you to carry my war. Isla took another breath, feeling her own resilience rise, quiet, stubborn, real. Then don't call it a war, call it a return, call it healing. Alaric stared at her, and something in his face shifted. Like a man who had been punished by his own guilt was finally being offered a way to serve instead of hide. From downstairs, a new sound interrupted them. A low knock, gentle this time. Human gentle. Isla froze. Alaric's posture changed instantly, alert, protective, but still controlled. A voice called up from the front door, nervous and ordinary. "Miss Isla, it's Officer Marin. We got a report about a break-in. Are you okay?" Alaric's voice turned into a vow. "They will come again, not to take you to test me." Isla's hand lifted to her chest, feeling her heart hammer. She could go downstairs and pretend none of this existed. She could run tomorrow, leave the house, leave the town, leave the story. Or she could stay and become the kind of person she'd always wished someone had been for her. Brave, kind, unshaken by darkness. Isla looked at Alaric, vampire king, reluctant protector, lonely leader trying to be good, and she realized the deepest twist of all. The monster behind the door wasn't the thing to fear. The real danger was what happens when good people decide they're too broken to be seen. Isla turned toward the stairs, then back to Alaric. "Open the curtains," she whispered. "Let them see you're not hiding anymore." Alaric's eyes widened slightly. "If they see me with you." "Then they'll know you have something to protect," Isla said, voice shaking but steady. "And you'll have a reason to stay kind." Alaric stood very still, as if weighing the cost of being visible. Then, slowly, he reached for the curtain. Outside, the watching shape didn't move. Downstairs, the officer knocked again. "Isla, please answer." Alaric pulled the curtain back, and the figure in the rain smiled, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. Isla felt the room tilt with dread and hope at the same time, because now the night knew. The king had stepped out, and he wasn't alone.